uh, almost total saturation of the Rothschilds that kind of permeate from how many years ago to now everything. I mean, if you're looking for the primary puppeteer, do your fingers point to the Rothschilds?
Yeah, well, there's one thing is that the history of Zionism is not taught in this country. In fact, it's not. It may be taught in Israel, but it's not taught anywhere else. But in this country, it should be taught.
What is Zionism?
Zionism is basically, in a nutshell, Jewish nationalism, but it's much more than that. But it's basically the idea that the Jewish people need to have a state as Jewish as England is English. That's what they used to say. And that a state for Jewish people. So the incarnation of this idea is the state of Israel. But if you look at the history of Zionism, you'll see that it was very much a project of the Rothschild family. The Rothschild family, for example, bankrolled the first 30 settlements in Palestine, Jewish settlements in Palestine. And they bankrolled the building of the Knesset and the government buildings, and many aspects of it. And the whole thing began like in the 1800s, like 1850s, 1860s, when the British were building the Suez Canal, and that was funded by the Rothschild family. So one of the ideas was that the Rothschilds wanted to have a Jewish state, a Rothschild state, on the edge of the Suez Canal in order to protect their investment, because it was so important, the Suez Canal. But over time, this Rothschild family has had a great influence on the state of Israel. And what they did in the late 1800s is that they promoted secret societies in Eastern Europe to go to the Jewish settlements, the Jewish villages and towns, and to promote Zionism, and tell these Russian people or these Ukrainian people that you're Jewish and your real home is in Palestine, in Israel, and you should speak Hebrew. So Zionism became a big movement, across the Jewish communities of Eastern Europe, and the first wave of immigration came from Russia, Western Russia.
So they're encouraging Jewish people to go to Israel way before.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, and this information is not very easily readily available, but there is a very good encyclopedia called the Encyclopedia of Zionism in Israel, printed in Israel in the 1970s, and it's a 2-volume set, and you can read all about the secret societies and the role that the Rothschilds played, and the secret society aspect is very important, because this is the part you don't see. You see that the media all works together like as if by a hidden hand it's guided. Or the government works very easily together as if there's a consensus. Where does that consensus come from? Where is that hidden hand? Well, it's the secret society. That's the role secret societies play in a democracy. So that, these characters over here all belong to the same secret society, and they conspire behind closed doors in a free society. Well, we're at a disadvantage to such a thing. And that's how they promoted Zionism, that's how they created the State of Israel, and that's how they continue to exercise their influence in our nation.
So how would you compare Zionism versus the monetary pole of capitalism and money?
Well, can you...
Well, I mean, is money driving everything, or is Zionist driving everything? Are they both, or... I mean, are they different, or are they linked at the hips?
Oh yeah, that's right. They're linked at the hips. I would say they're in cahoots. I would say they're like the right hand and the left hand of the same body, because the Rothschilds obviously are very much engaged in the monetary policy of the United States of America,
i.e., the Federal Reserve.
The Federal Reserve, thank you. The quantitative easing, even the production and circulation of the money in the United States is determined by these foreign people, like the Rothschilds. They own the Federal Reserve banks. They're the ones who own the debt that the United States is being dumped with from these wars.
Let me just interrupt you for a second. On the Federal Reserve that he's talking about, because I don't know who it was, but they are privately owned banks, and somebody applied through the Freedom of Information Act to find out who these bank presidents were, because he felt the public should know who owns their money. And it was declared a national security item. that you do not have the right to know who owns your money. So, because a lot of these Federal Reserve banks have foreign owners.
Right.
Well, as they say, the Federal Reserve is neither federal nor a reserve.
Right.
Exactly.
It's a joke.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry to interrupt, but I just thought.
No, well, that's, in Israel, on the 500 shekel bill, it's like a $200 bill. There's the image of Edmund Rothschild, and he's considered to be like one of the founding fathers of the state of Israel. And when you read my book about 9/11, there's a few instances where you'll see that the Rothschilds are exposed. But they're usually like 2 steps behind, 2 steps removed from any sort of criminal activity or direct. But if you see who the players are, like for example Ashton Carter, our Secretary of Defense today, has been a Rothschild employee for years. He's been working for the Rothschilds for decades, and he worked with this John Deutsch and Philip Zelikow. Philip Zelikow had something called the Catastrophic Terrorism Study Group in 1998, 1999. And he was working with Ashton Carter. And that's when they came out with this big article in Foreign Affairs magazine in the end of 1999, I think it was, in which they basically were imagining the transforming event that would change America. And at that time, Ashton Carter...
9/11?
Yeah, Ashton Carter and John Deutsch were working for a company that's Rothschild owned. They're Rothschild employees. Now, Ashton Carter is the current Secretary of Defense. What does that tell you? That tells you that the Defense Department of the United States of America is headed by a Rothschild agent. That's pretty serious.
But that's not unique.
No.
I mean, when I listened to the other night, I mean, the big R comes up all over the place.
Yeah, the big R. Yeah.
So if you were to give advice to the public,
Yeah.
you talked about it, but I guess I would want to say how you address becoming informed and accepting, or at least looking at what's going on. Because to me, the first step in consciousness, if you're a denier, if you're not even open to what's going on, then the likelihood you're going to make a good decision and change your life in any kind of a meaningful way kind of goes out the door if you're not aware to begin with that something's wrong.
Right. If you're not aware, if you basically accept the narrative that we're given by the media, about 9/11 and the war on terror, and this is very current, because Orlando is just another log on the fire.
Yeah.
So if you accept the narrative that they give you from Fox News or CNN, then you are going to be of the mind inclined to send your sons and daughters to war against Islam, on this crusade that they're cooking up. You're going to be inclined to basically hate Muslims.
Yeah.
Because, hey, look what they did in Orlando. Look what they did on 9/11, Our patience is running out. And this is the kind of tension that they're planning for this country. And that's why I think that this is the time for me to be speaking as much as I can in this nation, because if we don't undeceive our fellow Americans, then we are enslaved to the deception. And being enslaved to this deception is to be enslaved to an agenda of war and violence. And as a patriotic American, I cringe at the thought that this agenda will prevail. But they have prevailed for the last 15 years.
Yeah, we keep hoping, we keep saying, well, geez, how much further can it go? And it goes exponentially worse.
Exactly. And it can get a lot worse, because these people, not only do they want a war in Iran and in Syria, they want war with Russia.
Yeah.
I mean, this is serious. This is serious stuff.
Yeah, they're really trying to lay the match over there.
The one family, actually, the Kagan family at the Department of State, Donald Kagan and his sons Frederick and Robert, they brought us the war in Iraq. They brought us the war in Afghanistan because they're the ones who were the heads of PNAC. They're the ones who wrote this document called, Rebuilding America's Defenses, in which they said that whether Saddam Hussein is on the throne or not, the United States will have to invade Iraq and build permanent bases there, which is exactly what we've done. And they said Saddam Hussein is not the issue. The issue is having strategic control of Iraq, which I guess we've now achieved. Robert Kagan's wife, some people say Kagan, his wife is Victoria Nuland. She's the one who brought us the crisis in Kiev and brought in, she actually installed the prime minister, Yatsenyuk, Yats, right, you remember the phone call. and she installed this anti-Russian leader in Ukraine who basically said that, you know, Russian language no longer belongs to be an official language of Ukraine. Well, that's like installing a government in Ottawa, Canada that's anti-French.
Yeah.
There'll be a war in the next day. And the same thing, they knew that, but they're playing with fire. And how can it be that this little family, the Nuland family or the Kagan family, that they seem to have a permanent fiefdom at the Department of State and dragging this country from one war to another war? I mean, this whole idea that you can have these neocons, these you know, immigrants from Lithuania or Russia, sitting between the Defense Department and policy. They create the policy. You know, this Defense Policy Board used to be Richard Pearl and then Wolfowitz and these people, these Zionist neocons, how can they be the people that determine U.S. foreign policy when you're talking about war and peace?
Yeah.
This is absurd.
Yeah, well, you know, one of the things I looked up was false flags, and I started to go through part of the deceptions, which was, geez, there was the sinking of the Lusitania, there was the Gulf. What was the sinking of the Maine?
The Maine.
Was another one. There was the Gulf of Tonkin.
Yes.
Can you think of any others?
USS Liberty.
Oh, yeah, that was a big one. And these were all considered to be conspiracy theories to begin with. And then as time went on, we realized they were actually, I mean, the Liberty was Israeli attacked us, and they were going to blame it on Turkey, weren't they?
Egyptians.
Egyptians, that's what it was.
Yeah.
So these things happen, and we never seem to learn. You know, the history that most the public has goes back about 3 years, it seems. You know, we don't ever seem to learn that all this talk of conspiracy theories usually is the preamble to something real that's going on that we're trying to wake up the public to. It's not conspiracy theory. It's going to be reality when, you know, it's finally admitted.
Well, it's a convenient thing to use when somebody says something you don't like. Oh, it's conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And it may be, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. But as soon as somebody hears that, my ears slam shut.
Well, that's true, and they do that a lot.
It's the same way that when people want to ignore what I'm saying or what my message, they simply call me an anti-Semite.
Yeah.
And so they'll play this anti-Semite card, you know, and they'll say,
Yeah.
"Oh, Christopher Bolin is anti-Semite." Just do a Google search and you'll see it, because of course Google is full of slander and defamation against me. But it's not the case. I'm not anti-Semitic, but the actions of the State of Israel, especially the illegal actions of the State of Israel, certainly deserve to be scrutinized.
Yeah.
Especially when they're killing hundreds and thousands of your American compatriots.
You know, I sponsored Ken O'Keefe to speak in Burlington about 3 weeks ago, and he's an ex-Marine. He's
Ken O'Keefe.
Yeah,
I've heard of him.
and he's very. I'd like to say he's like kind of a serious George Carlin. He swears like a. I mean, he's
a kind of a
he
forceful
doesn't.
guy.
Yeah, he doesn't hold anything back. But on the other side of the fence, he was on the boat destined to Palestine with medical supplies.
Mavi Marmara.
Yeah, and as an ex-Marine, when the Israeli troops invaded and came down from helicopters on, he disarmed 2 or 3 Israeli commandos. He was arrested, he was beaten up, he was tortured in the Israeli things, and he was called the terrorist of Hamas.
Right.
And when he was released, he didn't wash because he wanted the blood that was all over his face to stay there. So he's an incredible guy, but before he came, there was a strong enough anti-Semitic aura about it that in spite of, you know, we only got like 20 or 30 people, which is, you know, light audience for Burlington, I thought. So it just goes to show that we really need to press whoever the powers that be, especially the media, to cover things and to make the people that are trying to niche things from happening, to out them, to say who's behind this. And, you know, if you don't want to come, don't come. But don't prevent other people from coming. And, you know, one of the things, and as it goes, we're headed to a worse and worse scenario. There's a television show called The Man in the Castle. I don't know if you've heard about it.
What is it called?
The Man in the Castle. And it's a TV series that I just came across the other day. But what it does is takes the premises, what would the world be like now if we lost World War II and Germans and the Nazi Germany was in charge in Japan. So it goes through what a typical day would be like if we were under Nazi control. And the thing that's scary about it is when you watch it, you say, oh my God, that's us. I mean, that's us like 2 years from now.
Yeah.
I mean, if we don't do something, if we don't take action, if we don't finally say, you know, I've got to look at what's going on, I've got to pull my head out of the sand, I'll be gentlemanly versus what I'd like to say. And start dealing with things, we're going to pay a heavy price. You're not going to be able to sit with your six packs and use your clicker and your lounge chair and watch Dancing with the Stars.
Yes. That's the thing, is that people have to understand that it really is urgent. We're trying to warn people of a impending disaster and let people know that the path that we're on now, the course that we're on now, needs to be changed. And the real problem is that we have basically two leading candidates, Trump and Clinton and Bernie, but none of those three people actually are calling for an immediate end of the war on terror, which is what we need to have. We need to have an immediate end of the war on terror. We have to bring our troops out of these places they don't belong. Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, we don't belong there. There's no American interest there.
Yeah, why are we there? I mean, that's exactly what I'm saying. When you say there's no American interest there, why are we sending our troops over there?
Exactly.
Who are we sending them there for?
Exactly.
Not for us.
Exactly. Well, I think that's what I've tried to make clear in my presentation, is that this war on terror agenda is a foreign agenda. It is, in fact, a Zionist agenda, an Israeli agenda, that benefits the state of Israel and benefits its Zionist masters, people like the Rothschilds. But it does not benefit us. In fact, it's destructive to the American nation. And if we don't understand that, if we don't get ourselves out of it, we don't extricate our nation from this deception will, in fact, destroy us. That's why it's imperative that people understand that. And so that's why I write the book, Solving 9/11. That's why I go on these speaking tours. And that's why I try to make this a talking point in the media, because now is the time. We're having an election coming up, in this nation, and now is the time to talk about this.
Right.
Because if we allow, business as usual to continue, there will be no more business.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the consequence of doing nothing is where we're headed. Right. And unless we kind of turn that paradigm around and start thinking about why we're here and what we're planning on doing about it, and realizing, mainstream media is not the source of your news.
Right.
So, anything else you'd like to say, Thomas?
I got a million things I'd like to say, but we don't have any more time, so I'm not going to be doing it. But I'll put all three of us up here. We can sort of close the show here.
Well, thank you, Christopher. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Chris.
speaking with us.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you very much.
When are you coming back?
Well, I'll be speaking in Brattleboro tonight at the Public Library.
He's coming tonight at 5:30.
5:30 at the Public Library.
Yeah.
We can almost go from here right next door.
Yeah. If I drive, I might even get there in time.
Yeah.
And then I go down to Cambridge, Massachusetts, and New York, and then across the country, and then I'll be coming back in the end of the summer.
I'd like to also pose this question to the audience. What is the anti-Semitic about what you heard right now? What besides factual presentations have you heard that caused you to do anything but listen to what this man has to say?
Well, I heard anti-Zionist. I didn't hear any anti-Semite. There's a big difference. I think worldwide, more of the Zionists are Christians than are Jews. The fundamentalists are very strong Zionists. For maybe the wrong reason, they think, according to their interpretation of the Bible, Jerusalem or Israel has to be Jewish before Jesus can come back.
Oh yeah. There's no question about it. There are more Christian Zionists in the United States alone than there are Jewish Zionists in the whole world.
Wow.
There's 40 million Christian Zionists in this nation, at least. Now it's probably like 50 million. So it's no question about it. Well,
I think that's it.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for coming. I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.